Good morning, one and all. Welcome to the 1 week FTP on the dynamics of research, prospects, reflections, and best practices. In day one and day two, we had already discussed about preparing research proposals, computational data analysis, and anti-plagiarism detection tools. Today, in the third day, we'll be discussing on meta-analysis. And for that, we have the resource person for the day, Dr. Aditya K. Panda, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Bioscience and Bioinformatics, Calicut University, Odisha. Sir has a PhD in biotechnology from the Institute of Life Science, Utkal University. Sir has published various papers in international journals and also bagged the DSC Inspire Faculty Award in the year 2012. On behalf of the coordinators, IQAC St. Xavier's College for Women, and all the participants, I welcome you, sir, to the session.
Thank you, madam. So at first, I would like to thank the organizer to send me an invitation to take some lectures in meta-analysis. And whenever I got a call from Linda ma'am, I was really very much surprised that I got a call from extreme south to extreme east. Anyways, the COVID-19 has some blessing too. A lot of things which can be done online. Earlier, we have never explored to do online. Always we try to meet each other and try to do in offline. So anyway, online is something good, something bad also. And for offline also having some good and some bad also. So anyway, I would like to thank from bottom of my heart to the organizer to inviting me. And before start, I would like to introduce myself, as Miss has already introduced me. But one thing, very important thing, that I'm MSc in botany. It's a plant science. Then I jumped to human genetics to work on some human disease. Most of my advisors told me, don't shift your field. But I had a desire to work something in human disease. I don't want to wish to see the botany, but I had a desire. So after qualifying the NET examination, I made 2-3 experts in human genetics or medical science, we can say. They refused me. They said, no, you are from botany background. Why you are coming here? You can't cope up in our research. Then I would like to thank one of my supervisor who has taken me. He normally works in various infectious diseases like malaria and filariasis. And he was the then director of Institute of Life Science, Bhubaneswar. So on our first interaction itself, he took me. Then I asked the same question. Before coming to you, I have visited 3 or 4 faculty members. Everybody has refused me. Then why you have considered me? He said that each and every individual has the potential to do any work. But only thing is that if you are determined, whatever is your degree, you can do that work. That's why I choose you. And you have to be sincere in your work, and you have to prove that whatever I choose, that is not a false one. That is the right choice for me. So anyways, I took long time to complete my PhD. I took a decade to complete my PhD, almost 10 years. But during the PhD, I got very good training. Whatever I wish to work, my supervisor never said no. He always support me. And meantime, I also got in contact with another collaborator of him, who is a past student of him. That is Professor Vidyut Das. He is one renowned professor in medicine in Odisha. And I always admire him because he spent morning 9 p.m. 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. in this clinic, in this that SC Medical College, Cuttack. And after 9, he active on research. So daytime he spend time with patient, and nighttime he works on the R&D sector. So it's very rare person you can find him. So anyway, during the PhD time, I came in contact with some good person. They induced me to explore the unexplored things, whatever it is. So after that, I qualified for DST Inspire faculty program, and I joined Central Institute of Jharkhand, worked there for 4 years in the Center of Life Science. Then each and every individual has a dream to come back to his home state. Then I got a chance at Calicut University and back here. I'm working here for last 3 years. And today is the 5th July, and today was the day I got the offer letter of this Calicut University, and I joined in the year 2018, and I joined on 10th July 2018. So meantime, so far during my long career, I have published around 80 publications, and out of those 80 publications, 28 publications on meta-analysis. During the PhD, meta-analysis was a new term for me. I never ever had any idea on meta-analysis. I have no idea on biostatistics, nothing else. So let me share my screen. So is this visible to all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you can find a colorful slides. I always keep my slides colorful because life is colorful. Whatever the day up to the last breath, we should enjoy the life. Some of the presenter always oppose me that don't put this much color in your slides. Use only black and white, but I don't like that. I always use colors anyways. So this is let's went back to the 10-year back. It's in the year 2011. Now it's 2021. So this is the first paper we published in meta-analysis, and all this credit goes to these two persons, Professor Das and Professor Ravindran, and only for him I was explore the unexplored things, and we're able to publish this paper for the first time. And at that time, PhD time, there was a rule in our laboratory, and most of the laboratory have some unique rule. In our laboratory, there was a rule. Then each and every day, all research scholar has to read at least one paper, and that is a very good habit also. So whenever I read through any papers, I always skip meta-analysis person because I don't know what is meta-analysis at that time, and meta-analysis looks a top job for me. So whenever I was going through any paper, I always used to skip the meta-analysis person. I look at the plots, it looks something dangerous to me, and I always keep on skipping that. So one day, and you have to read the papers, and you have to summarize all the papers, and you have to present those papers once per week. So whenever I present, since I always miss the meta-analysis person, my supervisor and Professor Das always said me that why you are skipping this? You should try to learn this. And none of us from our group, none of the PhD student, non-supervisor, nobody, no one have any idea on meta-analysis. So how to read? If you read it, whether you are following the actual path or you are going in a wrong direction, there is nobody to guide you, because you need a good teacher who had the mastery on that subject. If he can teach you, then you can follow the appropriate path. But we don't know what I'm doing. Anyways, I spent around 3 months to learn all these basics of this meta-analysis. But I was not sure whatever I'm learning, whether it's a right one or wrong one. We have no idea. So how to test, how to prove whether I'm walking on a good path, whether you're on the right path or a wrong path? There is two possibilities. One, I have to contact somebody who is an expert in meta-analysis, and I have to show my analysis to him, and he may put a comments. Either it's a good one or it's the analysis the way I'm doing, it's a wrong analysis. Or the second chance is that, second possibility is that we have to write up this manuscript and send to some journal and let the reviewer give their comments. So we choose the second option. We wrote the manuscript, sent to journal. So whenever the manuscript is communicated, it's having two possibilities. If you are following the right path, it may be accepted with minor modification or a major modification, whatever it may be. And if you are following the wrong track, it will be rejected. So in 1 month, we got the comment of the reviewer. It was a minor comment, and there was no comments from the meta-analysis section. And it shows that whatever we are performing this test is absolutely correct. And that gave us strength to continue to explore the meta-analysis further because it was accepted. Once it got accepted, we are satisfied that yes, we are walking on the right path. So since this is the first paper, at the time of talking, at the time of presenting, I will cite some of the examples from this paper. So all my friends, my participants should be clear regarding this paper. What is our observation on this paper? So in this paper, in the year 2010, we try to test our hypothesis that whether the blood group, there are three different, how many blood groups? O blood groups, A, B, and AB. 4 different type of blood groups omnipresent, majorly. So 4 blood groups, whether the blood group are linked with severe malaria or not. That was our hypothesis. To test this hypothesis, we enroll patients, and the patients are 2 types. One group of patients having severe malaria, and another group of patients are uncomplicated malaria, non-severe malaria, you can say. So we enroll around 400 patients, 400 P. falciparum infected patient, malaria patient. Out of them, close to 200 are severe cases, and others 200 are non-severe cases. And in that patients, we explore the prevalence of different blood groups. It means out of the 200 severe cases, how many having O blood group, how many having A blood group, how many having B, and how many having AB. Similarly, we also explore the prevalence of various blood group in non-severe cases also. And after analysis, we conclude that subjects carrying O blood groups are protective against the severe malaria cases. It means in non-severe cases, we will have higher prevalence of O blood group compared to the severe malaria cases. It means more O blood group, less severity. That was our observation. And it was a case control study because we have includes case, that is severe malaria, and control as a non-severe malaria cases. So it was a case control study. Then we try to explore, can we perform a meta-analysis in this aspect? And meta-analysis, if you look at the definition, meta-analysis, it means analysis of analysis. Means something has already analyzed, something has already reported in the form of publication. You have to drag out those publications and reanalyze it to obtain a firm conclusion, to have a strong conclusion. Because if you add up all the studies, suppose there was a study which included 100 patients, another study included 200 patients, another study have included 300 patients. If you pull up those studies, so 300, 200, 100, total will be the 600 samples. So this is the data of the 600 samples. So the more number of samples you will increases, the strength of your study or the power of the study also increases. So meta-analysis is the powerful tool to draw a firm conclusion from the previously published study. It means to conduct a meta-analysis, similar type of study has to be published earlier. You have to dig out those studies, pull up, in a statistical manner and to draw a firm conclusion on your hypothesis that whether it is associated or not associated like that. So if you look at the definition of this meta-analysis, so meta-analysis is a quantitative approach. Means you cannot perform qualitative approach in meta-analysis. You have to perform a quantitative, because you have to pull down the all previously published literature, the results or the findings of this previous published literature, and you have to combine those, analyze those, and to draw a definitive conclusion on this research question. So first you have to decide your research question, and based on the research questions, you have to search various database, and from the database, you have to download the relevant papers, screen those papers, take out or extract the data, and those data has to be pulled down, analyzed in a statistical approach to draw a firm conclusion. That is the basic of this meta-analysis. Meta-analysis cannot be done if you don't have earlier published literature. So earlier published literature is the base on which meta-analysis stand up. So what is the basic difference in a normal case control study and a meta-analysis? So in normal case control study, if you look at my previous example, each and every sample's data is collected. Like, what is the prevalence of blood group in severe cases? What is the prevalence of A blood group in the severe cases and non-severe cases? So each and every individual is a data here. But in for meta-analysis, each and every individual published paper is a data here, right? So for case control study, each and every subject is one data, and for meta-analysis, each and every papers that you are going to include in this analysis is one data. So if you look at the history of this meta-analysis, for the first time it was performed by Carl Pearson in the year 1904. So why he performed the meta-analysis? He performed the meta-analysis to study the efficacy of typhoid vaccine. So it indicates before the year 1904, there are some reports which talks about efficacy of typhoid vaccine. It may be 3 or it may be 4. I have never gone through this paper published by the Carl Pearson. Whatever it may be, what Pearson did, he pulled out all this previous published literature, plumbed it in a statistical manner, he analyzed and studied what is the combined efficacy of this typhoid vaccine. Although at the time, the meta-analysis term was not coined, it was coined later on in the 1976 by Jean V. Glass, but the procedure which was followed by the Carl Pearson was a simple meta-analysis. Similarly, nowadays, COVID-19 is the hot cake. And you also heard some days around 3-4 months back, there was one antiviral, that's a remdesivir. There was a scarcity on the remdesivirs, right? So there are several reports that talks about remdesivirs helps in treatment of COVID-19. There are several reports. So how to study? What is the efficacy of the remdesivir? Only you have to pull out those studies. Those are already published on remdesivirs. Suppose 100 COVID-19 patients were enrolled in a study. To the 50 patients, they have administered remdesivir. Another 50%, they administered one placebo. Placebo is nothing, but this is color, shape, everything is same with the medicine, your testing medicine. So 50% treated with remdesivir, 50% treated with placebo, and look at the efficacy. how many patients are alive after treatment or how many patients died during the treatment. Suppose out of the 50 patients where remdesivir has administered, 2 patients died, suppose. And for placebo, out of 50, suppose 10 patients died. It shows that remdesivir is effective in that particular study. Similarly, whatever the study on remdesivir can be downloaded, can be analyzed in a meta-analysis, and a firm conclusion can be drawn. What is the efficacy of the remdesivir in COVID-19? That can only be done by meta-analysis. And most of the time, meta-analysis play a crucial role on deciding what should be our treatment protocol, which medicine should be given to have optimal result. So what is the basic difference in a review and a systematic review and a meta-analysis? Most of the time, if you follow meta-analysis, title of the manuscript always mention a systematic review and meta-analysis. So if you look at the review portion, what should be the author's number? A review can be written by one authors or many authors. But for systematic review and meta-analysis, one author is not enough. You need a group to analyze. You need a group to conduct the systematic review and meta-analysis. If you look at the search strategy, any individuals can be perform the search strategy, but for systematic review and meta-analysis, there is a strict guideline. At least 2 or more than 2 individuals should perform a search analysis, because we are human, we may made any mistakes. So that mistakes can be rectified if 2 or more than 2 individuals perform the search of the literature. And to draw a summary and conclusions for review, author has to be judged. He has to give his own opinion. What should be the summary and conclusion based on his extensive review. But for meta-analysis, you have to follow the statistics. Based on the result of the statistics, the summary and conclusion has to be drawn. So, in nutshell, a review can be prepared by a single author, and whatever is his observation, he can write down the summary or the conclusion. But for a meta-analysis, we need a group, at least more than 2. Always at least 3 is required, because 2 individuals can search the database, they can extract the data, and if any confusion arises, then the 3rd individual can sort out that confusion. So at least 3 individuals is required for meta-analysis, and the summary and conclusion is always supports by statistical test. So whatever the results obtained by the statistical test, that has to be leads to a strong conclusion. So in nutshell, you can say the meta-analysis, for meta-analysis, we need a group. It's not a one individual's work. So yesterday I performed a search in PubMed. So PubMed is a storehouse of all medical published journals. Most of the medical published journals are indexed in PubMed. And if you look at this graph from the 2011 to 2020, the number of meta-analysis papers published in medical journals has increased exponentially. In 2011, it was close to 7,000 paper published. But if you look at the 2020, it's close to 30,000. So from 8,000 to 30,000. It's really a high jump or long jump, you can say. And if you look at the 2021, just 6 months has passed. It's close to 20,000. So we are expecting around 35,000 of papers it will published in meta-analysis. And this is the data of paper published only in medical journal. I have not included other social sector and other sectors journals. It's only in medical journal and indexed in PubMed. So huge number of people are involved in the meta-analysis because the meta-analysis has some impact on deciding various things. It has always some policy makers, they used to look for the meta-analysis paper to decide the health policy, because these conclusions are drawn by this meta-analysis very, very far. So another example here I would like to cite. Last year, our group also involved in meta-analysis. Not meta-analysis, involved in the COVID-19. And during the May or June, we have published 3 papers in COVID-19. All are statistical papers. Out of these 3 papers, the last one, that is the C-reactive proteins, this is one meta-analysis paper. And other 2 are normal paper, normal statistical paper. We have used the secondary data, which is available in the database, coined a hypothesis, perform some common statistical test, and based on our observation, we write up this manuscript and communicate it. And out of these 3 papers, if you look at the citation of this meta-analysis paper is very, very high. It has already cited 55 times compared to the other 2. All 3 papers involving COVID-19. But if you look at the statistics approach, the paper which is cited high number of times, 55 times, this follows the meta-analysis, and other 2, I think both are in correlation analysis. So third one is the meta-analysis. So always people trust meta-analysis more firmly, more efficiently compared to the other tests. That's why I've shown you this one. So gradually the number of citations increases, and most of the people are following this. So what is the importance of meta-analysis? Why we should study meta-analysis, and what are the basic observation is the meta-analysis? First point is that this meta-analysis it identify the heterogeneity among included studies. So when we try to perform a meta-analysis, at first we have to go for a literature search. In the literature search, based on our inclusion and exclusion criteria, we select some papers, and among those papers, whatever the results mentioned in those papers, the heterogeneity on these papers, on this result of those papers, can be investigated by meta-analysis. Meta-analysis is also used to investigate the publication biasness in the included report. So whatever the report you have included in the meta-analysis, whether any publication biasness exists or not. And third thing, the meta-analysis increases the power of the study. It means whatever the conclusion you are drawing, it is more strength compared to the individual case control study. And each and every points I will cover, like heterogeneity, what is publication bias, and how it increases the statistical power. I will cover this in next slides. So as I told you, your first aspect is to source the data. based on your keywords. You have to sort your previous published literature, download it, extract the data. So after extracting the data, can we pull all data and analyze? It means whatever the data available on control, can we pull in control? Whatever the data available in cases, can we pull those? Likewise, if you, I will try to cite my second slides. So I have taken severe cases and non-severe cases. So whatever the paper already published on severe cases, can I pull those data in one? And can I pull the data on control, make another group? And can I compare those both groups? This is not the right approach, because you have to perform some models in meta-analysis. There's a fixed model, random model. You have to test the heterogeneity, whether heterogeneity presents or absence. A lot of things has to be carried out. So it's not a good approach to pull down all data, analyze, and draw a conclusion. It has to be follow appropriate path of meta-analysis. The simple pooling data is not a meta-analysis. You will get results, but results will vary drastically from the actual result, what it was supposed to be. So for example, here is an example. In left side, these are the different papers published on administration of steroids in two groups. One is experiment group, another is control group. So what happens? Suppose if you consider the first one, first paper is Alexander. It was published in 1972. So they have taken 55 cases, and the 55 cases of certain disease, it is written as experiment, certain disease, and administered with steroids. And in control, they have taken 55 cases control and administered with steroids, and they scored for number of individual died during treatment. So if you consider the first one, Alexander, out of the 55 experiments cases, 16 individual died. If you look at the control cases, out of 55 controls, 22 individual died. This is the first one. Similarly, if you consider the last one, Jarrett, 1995, he has taken 30 experimental cases, and out of 30, none died. Similarly, in case of control, they have chosen 30 control, and out of them, 0 died. So if you pull up all the data, then experiment case will be total number is 1194, and out of 1194, 410 individual died in experiment group. Similarly, in the control group, total number of control is 925, and total number of individual died during treatment is 301. And if you analyze the simple chi-square test, if you perform simple chi-square test, then here is the results. Sorry. So the relative risk is 1.06. And always you try to remember there is a thumb rule in relative risk. If it is more than 1, then it shows the treatment is dangerous, or treatment is leading to the death of the individuals. Anything leads to susceptibility, always give relative risk more than 1. If it is protective, then the relative risk should be less than 1. So by the pooling this data, it shows that administration of steroids increases the chances of death in experiment case compared to the control. This is the take-home message of this analysis. If you pull up, add up all this data, so in the left side is mentioned all authors' name. Each author's name is one published paper. Like Alexander, this one paper. Then Barakman, this is another paper. Kakon, another paper. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So 16 papers they tried to pull and found that the steroid treatments increasing the death rate. So the steroid treatment is not advisable as per this analysis. The same data, next we perform a meta-analysis. Here is the in the right corner, right side, this is the result of the meta-analysis. So the first one, it is mentioned 6.6 weight. So I'll come to weight later on, what is weight. And next it is 0.73 is the relative risk, and 0.43 to 1.23. It is a 95% confidence interval. It means if you perform 100 times these experiments, then the relative risk will lie in between 0.43 and 1.23 95 times. So when we perform the meta-analysis of the same data, which shows that relative risk of 1.06, the result of the meta-analysis revealed the relative risk of 0.96. It means if you administer steroid, rather than it's showing a susceptibility, really it's offering resistance, and it's opposed or the hampers the death ratio, lower the death ratio if you administer this steroids. So pooling of a data will be a blunder. It's better to follow the meta-analysis to have a firm conclusive statements on this kind of meta-analysis. So it should not be pooled. It should follow the appropriate procedure of meta-analysis. So as I told you, relative risks more than one, it leads to susceptibility, and relative risk less than one is resistance. So left side picture, after pulling the data, we conclude that it is increasing the death rate, but in meta-analysis revealed that it is decreasing the death rate. So steroid should be given to this category of patients. So this is the basis difference between the pooling data and performing the meta-analysis. Okay, so next. So what are the basic steps we have to follow in the meta-analysis? There are several guidelines to follow step by step in meta-analysis. The very first thing that you have to define your research question, what you are going to do, and you have to coin a hypothesis. If I cite the example of my first paper, then our research question was whether these blood groups are associated or are linked with severe malaria. That was our research question. And to test that research question, we perform a meta-analysis, right? So at first you have to define your research question. Second thing, you have to define the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So the inclusion and exclusion criteria has to be more concrete. Here I would like to put the example of the first paper, where since we are going to decipher the role of various blood group in severe malaria, as the severe malaria caused by P. falciparum, so our inclusion criteria was only paper that described about the infection of P. falciparum has to be included. It means malaria due to other parasites, that the vivax, malaria, oval, those has to be excluded. Second, as you know, most of the paper published in English language, but there are other paper also which published in other language like Chinese language, German language, and we could not understand those. So another our inclusion criteria was we have to include the reports which are published in English language. We have also taken other aspect also, like as our target was to study the role of ABO blood group in severe malaria. We have excluded the reports which are having Rh negative factor, because you might have known O positive blood group exists, O negative also exists. Similarly, A plus, A negative, B plus, B negative, AB plus, AB negative. But the frequency of negative Rh factor negative is very, very rare. So it's better to exclude those. If we include those, again the study will be diluted. It cannot be a concrete one. So we have excluded the reports, those are available, those have included their patients with Rh negative factors data. So the inclusion and exclusion criteria has to be concrete, and you have to take a call, you have to take the decision what should be your inclusion criteria and what should be your exclusion criteria. Next, third point is a very important point. You have to locate the search studies by using, locate the research study by using various search engine. There are various search engine. What are the search engine? These are the engine through which we can search previously published paper. One common example is Google Scholar. We can use the Google Scholar sorry, to trace the previously published paper. For medical science, we mostly use PubMed. PubMed is the best search engine for dig out the previous published literature in medical sciences. You can also choose Scopus, ScienceDirect. There are various search engines, and it is advisable to use at least 2 or more than that search engine to have your meta-analysis. Only one search engine is not enough. And whatever the number you got, for example, if I put any term, any keywords in Google Scholar, suppose I wish to decipher the role of ABO blood group in severe malaria. So if I'll write in Google Scholar, ABO blood group, severe malaria, it will give you thousands of paper. And whatever the number you are getting, that number has to be noted down. Any search engine you are using, whatever the number you obtain, it has to be noted down, because you have to give one flow diagram in each and every meta-analysis report. There is a guideline, a flow diagram you have to give in, and I will show you how to construct the flow diagram. And in that flow diagram, the first starting point will be which database you have used, how many paper you have hit, how many paper you got. Then you have to come to the screening person based on your inclusion and exclusion criteria, how many paper was removed, and finally how many paper you have considered for the meta-analysis. So you have to use at least 2 or more search engine to locate the previous published studies. Now come to the fourth point. Determine the eligible study based on your prefixed inclusion criteria. As I told you earlier, your inclusion and exclusion criteria has to be clearly defined, and based on that inclusion and exclusion criteria, you have to determine which study you have to enroll for this meta-analysis. It may be 4, it may be 5, but there is a guideline on the meta-analysis. At least the minimum number of study required for meta-analysis is 2. It should be more than 2. 2 is the minimum number. You cannot perform meta-analysis in one study. At least 2 studies are required. But more number of study, if you'll add up, then the power of the meta-analysis goes on increasing. Next, extract the important data from each study. So if you find out the paper based on your inclusion and exclusion criteria, you have to download this paper, keep in one folder, and you have to extract the important data from that published paper. What are the important data? First important data is you have to note down the author's name, first author's name and year of publication. That is very, very important. First author's name and year of publication. Then other data which you are looking for based on your research question or hypothesis, those have to be noted down or extracted from this previous published paper, what you have considered for this meta-analysis. Then another aspect, data must be converted into common metrics. So any scale, whatever, for example, suppose I wish to investigate height of students enrolled in India, in PG, height of PG first year students enrolled throughout the India. Suppose there are 4 or 5 papers already published in database. Some has mentioned in the height in the terms of feet, some has mentioned in the unit of cm, centimeter. Then all those data has to be converted into a common matrix. Either it may be feet, either it may be cm. Because at the time of analysis, software don't know whether it is a feet or it is a cm. It will take only value. So before that, all matrices, whatever the units, it has to be converted into a common unit. It may be cm, it may be feet, it may be weight in the terms of kilogram, gram, whatever it may be. You have to follow a common matrices. Next, so all this activity you have to do it by yourself. Software won't work here. But last 3 points that will be taken care of meta-analysis software. That is to investigate the population biasness. This is the very first step of meta-analysis. By the help of software, you have to look for the publication biasness. Next, you have to investigate the data homogeneity, whether whatever the papers you have enrolled for meta-analysis, those are homogeneous or those are heterogeneous. It has to be decided by the software. Then you have to perform a sensitivity analysis to find out the robustness of your analysis, whether the meta-analysis that you have performed is robust or not robust. That can be decided by sensitivity analysis. So 3 different analyses will be carried out by the software, and other things you have to taken care of by yourself, by your group. Population bias, data homogeneity, and sensitivity analysis. These 3 can be performed by the software. Next. So I'm not able to get to next slides. The problem is going on. Just a minute. So is this visible now?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So as I told you, the first point we have to perform by the help of software is the publication biasness. So what is publication biasness? If you look at the actual definition of the publication biasness, it is very, very common in the academic research because it is very easy to publish a significant observation with a significant results obtained paper compared to a non-significant paper. It means whatever your hypothesis, if you are proving your hypothesis, if that is the correct, then those kind of paper is very easy to publish as compared to if you are disapproving your hypothesis. It means anything that is very interesting, because always our hypothesis is interesting one. So if it is interesting, that is very easy to publish. And if it is not interesting, so those are very, very tough to publish. But in academic integrity, it is very, very important to publish dual type paper. Significant observation has to be published and non-significant also has to be published, because to maintain an equilibrium, so both type of paper has to be published. But in most of the academic research, it is very easy to publish the significant paper compared to non-significant one, and that increases the publication biasness. Means we are biased towards publication where we observe significant results. In meta-analysis terms of aspects, suppose if you have enrolled 10 studies, one study out of 10 studies, suppose 9 studies, they include 100 cases, hundreds cases like that, and one of the study they have enrolled 1000 number of samples. So if you try to analyze those type of research observation in meta-analysis, then the result of the meta-analysis always try to drag towards the paper, result of the paper, which includes more number of cases. So by looking at the data, you can directly say that what would be the result of the meta-analysis. And those kind of papers always better to avoid, because that will completely drag the result of the meta-analysis towards themselves only. So how to deal with publication biasness? There are two methods to deal with publication biasness: to test whether whatever you have studied have enrolled for the meta-analysis, those are having publication biasness or those are free of publication biasness. First point is your funnel plot, which I have shown in the right side. This is a funnel plot where each circles represents one study, result of one study. And funnel plots, you have to look at the funnel plot and you have to decide whether the publication bias exists or it is absent. It won't tells you, it won't give you any statistics measure. It's only visualization purpose. First objective is the first thing is that first condition is that all study, most of the studies should be remain inside the funnel. If you look at this example, one study remain outside, right? Most of the study remain inside this funnel. Second thing is that the studies should have symmetry. If you look at a horizontal line in between of the funnel, then the study, whatever you have considered, whatever you have enrolled, should be equally distributed. Then you can say publication biasness is absent here. But if you look at this picture, most of the study they lies towards right. In left side, you will have 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 study, and majority of study in the right side. So from this, looking at this funnel plot, you can predict that possibly whatever this results, whatever this data you have enrolled for meta-analysis are not following the publication bias. It means the publication biasness is existing here. But this is a visualized purpose. It won't tell you exact publication biasness. For exact publication biasness, you have to go for Aggar's regression intercept analysis. And in Aggar's regression intercept analysis, you have to note down three important value. One is intercept value, second one is 95% CI value, confidence interval value, and third one is P value. And these three value has to be reported while you write down the meta-analysis paper. It has to be reported. P value, 95% CI, and intercept. And looking at the P value, you can say whether its publication biasness exists or it is absent. If the P value is less than 0.05, if the P value is less than 0.05, then it shows presence of publication biasness. Okay, so publication biasness can be studied in two different approach. First is the funnel plot, which is just means for visualization. You have to look at the funnel plot and decide whether publication biasness is present or absent. Second aspect is the Aggar's regression intercept. And if you compare the funnel plot and Aggar's regression intercept, then Aggar's regression test is the more valid one compared to the funnel plot. But there is a rule, there is a mandate. You have to report both funnel plot and Aggar's regression intercept. And an Aggar's regression intercept, look at the P value. If P value is less than 0.05, then publication biasness exists in your study what you have enrolled for meta-analysis. So next, what if the publication biasness exists? Should you stop the analyzing this data? No. You can use, there is a method, trim and fill method, to correct the publication biasness. So there is one icon. I will show you in my demo classes how to do the trim and fill methods. Just click that icon. It will, the software automatically, it will create some artificial study in such a way that one publication biasness become null, whatever you have taken into consideration of this meta-analysis. So first point, publication biasness can be investigated in two approach. One is funnel plot, it's a visualization one, but the most appropriate one is the Aggar's regression, where you have to note down three value, intercept value, 95% CI, and P value. And P value is the most crucial one. You have to look at the P value and decide whether whatever the paper you have considered for this meta-analysis, publication biasness is present or absent. Looking at the P value, you have to decide. If the P value is less than 0.05, then publication biasness is present. If publication biasness is present, then you have to go for one further step, that is a trim and fill method, to adjust the publication biasness. Next approach, second approach, by the help of software, you have to test the heterogeneity. Heterogeneity meta-analysis is very, very crucial, because based on the result of heterogeneity, you have to choose the model, which model is best fit for your meta-analysis. For meta-analysis, two models are available. One is fixed effect model, another is random effect model. Based on the heterogeneity, you have to take a call whether which model you wish to use. So what is homogeneity? Homogeneous means similar. If you look at the age profile of PG students, most of the PG students, they got their admission in the age of 21 or 22. So those population, in the terms of age, you can say this is a homogeneous one. If you look at the age profiles, those are attending this FDP program, this is not homogeneous. Some are around 30, some may around 40 also, some 45, 50 also. So this is a heterogeneous population. So based on the heterogeneity, we have to decide which model you have to use. If heterogeneous, then you have to go for random effect model. If it is a homogeneous, then you have to go for fixed effect model. So what is the basic cause of this heterogeneity? And heterogeneity is not bad. Heterogeneity is good also, because whenever you conduct any experiment on human in different population, like in India, some are doing in America, some in German, heterogeneity has to be present, because we are not same. response to a particular drug is also not same. For example, nowadays we are administering Covishield in India, developed by AstraZeneca, and the same vaccines also administration is going on in different population. If you look at the efficacy of this Covishield, the efficacy in Indian population will be differ from its efficacy in US population or UK population. So it varies from population to population. And the heterogeneity is due to several factors are available on this heterogeneity. One example that I cited you, that's the population structure, our genetic composition. That's why it alters from population to population. Even if you try to decipher the efficacy of Covishield among state to state, it also varies, because our genetic composition is slightly different. Our food habit is something different. Okay. So heterogeneity is exists. If heterogeneity exists, then you have to follow the random effect model. And if it is a homogeneous type of structure, then you have to follow the fixed effect model. The first experiment, you have to perform the publication biasness. Second one is the heterogeneity. And to score the heterogeneity, like for publication biasness, I told you two things. First is the funnel plot. You have to look at the funnel plot. Second one is the Ayers regression. Similarly, to test the heterogeneity, whether it is homogeneous or heterogeneous, we have to look at the three statistical terms. One is Cochrane Q test. If the Q value is less than 25, then it is homogeneous. If Q value is more than 25, then heterogeneity exists. But sometimes this may alter. This value is not fixed. So only you have to focus on P value. If P value is less than 0.05 of Cochrane Q test, so we have to follow the Cochrane Q test at first. Look at the P value. If P value is less than 0.05, then heterogeneity is present in the enrolled results. We have also looked for I-square test. So three things: Cochrane Q test, Q value you have to note down, you have to note down the P value, and you have to note down the I-square value. I-square value, if this is 0, then the sample or the report that you have included, data from the report that you have included, it's completely homogeneous, which never exists. And up to 25%, small heterogeneity. 25 to 50% is moderate heterogeneity, and more than 50% is the high heterogeneity. So one thing you can notice, if the P value of Cochrane Q test is significant, that is, if it is less than 0.05, then automatically by default, the I-square value will be more than 50. At the time of our hands-on training, I'll show you if the P value is less than 0.05, then you can look at the I-square value, it must be more than 50. It always follow a pattern. So to test the heterogeneity, three things you have to note down: Q value, P value, and I-square test, result of the I-square test in the terms of percentage. So as I told you, based on this result of the heterogeneity, we have to follow different model. If the enrolled samples, enrolled results, enrolled data are homogeneous in nature, then we have to follow the fixed effect model. If these are heterogeneous in nature, then we have to follow the random effect model. These are two different models used in meta-analysis based on result of the heterogeneity. If heterogeneity exists, we have to follow the random effect model. If this is homogeneous, then we have to follow the fixed effect model. So how these two models are different from each other? For example, if we have 5 studies, suppose we have 5 studies. In 5 studies, if you look at the number of samples enrolled for the investigation are for study number 1, suppose 50 samples. Study number 2 is 12, 3 is 12, 4 is 12, and 5 is 12. Then when you try to pull this all and perform a meta-analysis, then the contribution of each and every study will be differ. For example, as I told you, for the first study, we have considered 50 samples, 50 individual data. It means the contribution for the meta-analysis of the first study will be 50%. Since the total number is 100, suppose the total number is 100, and for second, third, and fourth and fifth, the contribution of there is 12.5%, 12.5%, 12.5%, like this. Okay. So if you perform a fixed effect model, then whatever based on their sample size, the contribution percentage towards the analysis of meta-analysis will remain constant. Fixed means constant. More sample will contribute more value to this meta-analysis. Net result of the meta-analysis will be altered by higher number of samples included from a study. Suppose if you are considering a heterogeneous study and you are using the random effect model, then the contribution of each study will be close to equal. It means if you have taken 5 studies, then their contribution will be close to 20%. So in fixed model, contribution of the first study was 50%. If you follow the fixed model, if you follow the random model, then theoretically it should be, what should be the percentage? 5 means 20%. 20% contribution from each study. That is theoretically, but in actual sense, as the number of the first study is very, very high, from the 50, it will reduce to 35 or 38% contribution, and contribution of other study will be increases from 12.5 to 17, 18%. So in the random effect model, the contribution has to be randomized and equal contribution from each study towards the result output of meta-analysis. For a fixed effect model, their contribution is fixed. Whatever the number of sample you have enrolled from this previous study, the number itself will decide how many contribution, how much contribution of each study towards the result of the meta-analysis. Next, to study the robustness of the meta-analysis, we have to take forward to a sensitivity analysis. Sensitivity analysis is nothing but exclusion of one study and conduct the meta-analysis. Suppose we are taking 5 studies, then for sensitivity analysis, first study has to be excluded, and the whole meta-analysis will be performed in the 4th study. In second round, second study will be omitted, and 1, 3, 4, 5. That's 3 studies will be pulled down and give you the meta-analysis results. That will tells you whether one study is deciding factor, whether it's controlling the result of the meta-analysis. Theoretically, if this is not so, then the final meta-analysis results should not be varied. And during our hands-on training, I will show you how to perform sensitivity analysis by removing out one study in one goal and conduct the meta-analysis. And if your analysis is robust, then the net meta-analysis results should not be hampered when you review one study in each time. It means the net meta-analysis results should be remain constant. Not constant, it should not be highly significant. It should fluctuate close to the final meta-analysis results. That shows your meta-analysis what you have performed is robust. So 3 different tests has to be performed. First is publication by sorry publication biasness by funnel plot and Eggers regression test. Second, heterogeneity test by Cochrane Q, p-value, and I-square value. Third one is the sensitivity test. So only 3 tests has to be conducted by this meta-analysis software. Other things, the researcher has to be taken care of. Next, come to the forest plot. This is the visualization of the meta-analysis. Whenever we perform meta-analysis, in a graphical format, you are going to present that is a forest plot. For if you look at if you look at the forest plot, it consists of horizontal lines. I'll show you the forest plot later on. And that horizontal line is nothing but it's the 95% confidence interval. If the longer line, then the confidence interval is higher. If the confidence interval is higher, then the strength of the study is low, because the confidence intervals gap and strength of the study is inversely always proportional. And you can find a black square box, and the black square box, the size of the black square box is always related to weightage of the study, how much it contributes towards the net result of the meta-analysis. If it is some paper, if some published literature is published, your paper is contributing more, then the size of this box will be larger compared to the others one. And you can find a diamonds. Diamond is very crucial. It's very important molecules. So if you look at the diamond is nothing but there is the final result of the meta-analysis. So when you ever look a meta-analysis plot, that will consist of horizontal line, black box, and diamond. Diamond is the final result of the meta-analysis. So if you look at the forest, if you take a snap in the forest, that is consist of only tree you can find, that vertical tree. If you twist it in 90 degree, then it will look like this. So this is the forest plot, where each line represents study one. In this forest plot, we have included 4 studies. First one is the result of first study, second study, third study, fourth study. Instead of study 1, study 2, study 3, study 4, it should mention author's name and year in real sense. In real reporting of forest plot should be author's name and year. And this horizontal line represents confidence interval of this study, study 1. This is the confidence interval of study 1. And the black box represents weightage of the study, how much this study contributing towards the net results of this meta-analysis. Similarly, if you look at the study number 2, the confidence interval is very low, and the strength of the study, contribution of the study towards the net meta-analysis is very high, because the black box size is bigger compared to the previous one. And the diamond, look at the diamond one. This is the overall estimate. This is nothing but this is the result of the meta-analysis, final result of the meta-analysis. If you pull this 4 study and analyze, then you will get this is the final result, where this is 0.04. 0.04 is the relative risk RR value, and 2 edge of this diamond represent the confidence interval. So the results, you won't find a horizontal line, rather the diamond will be spread up to this position where the confidence interval ends. If you look at the whole result of this forest plot, then you can say that the confidence interval is a diamond is very minimal. It means the strength of the study is very robust. Next, more familiar with the forest plot. It's always getting freeze. So this is the forest plot. So this is one of the forest plots that we have reported in the first paper. If you look at, I have put one circle here. These are the various data. You will find out after analysis, this is data for individual study. Whatever the data you are looking at, odds ratio, lower limit, upper limit, Z value, P value, this is the result of first study. This is not for the meta-analysis. Similarly, the second line, if you look at, this is the data of second study, third study, like that. And the last line, that the combined, I've written combined, This is the real result of the meta-analysis. In the real result of the meta-analysis, you have to focus on two things. First one is p-value, that is 0.010, and you have to look at the odds ratio, 0.50. Based on the p-value, you can say whatever your hypothesis you have coined, that is significant. And if you look at the odds ratio, as I told you, relative risk and odd ratio, if it is more than 1, then that is susceptible. If it is less than 1, then it is offering resistance. And this picture is for O blood group, because O blood groups offer protection against severe malaria. If you look at the odds ratio, it is 0.5, it is less than 1. So it's offering protection against severe malaria. So in meta-analysis, you have to focus on two value. One is p-value, another is r-value. Of the lower line, last line, you have to focus. And if you look at the forest plot, this is the diamond, this is the result of this study, and each and every individual horizontal line and a black box. These are the black box is the weightage of the study, how much the study has contributed towards the net result, and the horizontal line is the confidence interval. Similarly, these are the study name, because we have included how many study? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, 6. 6 study are included. So in the first column, you can find the study name. Next, you can find the individual data. Next, you can find the forest plot. So in first column is the study name, list of studies included in the meta-analysis. And as I told you, the last line is the result of the meta-analysis, where you have to focus on p-value and odds ratio. Two things you have to note it down. This one is the 95% CI and odds ratio of individual study. And this one, diamond one, is the odds ratio and 95% CI of meta-analysis. So while reporting meta-analysis, we have to follow several guidelines. There are several guidelines, at least 4 guidelines are there to report a meta-analysis. You have to follow the line by line, and you have to prepare your manuscript as per this guideline. Because whenever your manuscript goes to a reviewer, at first they will check whether you have followed the guideline or not. Suppose if you perform a meta-analysis of randomized controlled trial, then you have to follow the quorum guideline. If it is an observational study, then we have to follow the MOS guideline. If it is some diagnostic approach, then we have to follow the STRAT guideline. And if your meta-analysis do not fall on these 3 categories, by default, we have to follow the PRISMA guideline. So following PRISMA guideline for other study, and for RCT, quorum guideline, observational study, MOS guideline, and for diagnostic approach, STRAT guideline. For example, if you look at the PRISMA guideline, you have to give always one flow diagram. As I told you earlier, first one is the identification. Whenever you sort a search database, the number of articles you observe, it has to be mentioned. And at least 2 search databases you have to use. Here, this report, they obtained around 1017 publications in their search. Whenever you use various databases, then the possibility of getting a particular study is very high. For example, in one Google Scholar, I got a paper, and the same paper can be traced through PubMed. So this is a duplication data. If you observe similar that kind of data, then one paper has to be excluded and one paper has to be included, since the paper itself is same. So after removal of the duplication data, the authors obtained 222 studies, and out of this 422 studies, and out of this 422 study, they have screened the whole paper. They study line by line, and based on their inclusion and exclusion criteria, they finally consider 26 studies for the meta-analysis. So each and everything has to be mentioned clearly, by which point you have excluded which data. For example, in the right side, they have mentioned full text article exclude 21 because those are not coming under the inclusion criteria. In some paper, there is no data, so 8 number of paper have excluded due to absence of data. Some of the papers, they do not follow the HWE, that's Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. That's why they have excluded 2. Some genotype mismatch, that's why I excluded 2. So each and every, and some other diseases, because their target was something and they obtained the results, obtained the paper for other diseases. So they have excluded 3 papers. In some papers, there was no control data, so they have excluded 2 papers. Similarly, each and every aspect, each and every number has to be disclosed. Why you have excluded those? And this is the rules how to report the meta-analysis. And this is the PRISMA guideline. Second, there is one checklist you have to give in while reporting the meta-analysis. All publication you may publish to any, you may communicate to any journal. They require you have to give the flowchart, detailed flowchart, and you have to give the checklist. Checklists are nothing. You have to mention the page number, in which page what you have mentioned. For example, first and title. The identify the report as systematic review, meta-analysis or both. It means the title has to be included term meta-analysis or systematic review. If you have mentioned, you have to write down yes and reported on which page of the manuscript, page number 1, 2, whatever you have to mention. Similarly, everything they have noted down, everything, all things has to be mentioned, and in which page you have mentioned, that has to be disclosed. That's the guideline. So next, there are several software available. There are several meta-analysis software available. Some are free, some are paid software. If you if you look for the free software, these are Rebman, Meta-Analyst, Epimeta, Meta-Test, there are tons of. But the ways to do the calculation user-friendly, you won't get in free software because those are free. So if you have some paid, there are several paid software also. And out of these, I have tried the CMA. CMA is a very user-friendly software. And I have learned it by myself only. You can imagine how much it is easy to do, how much it is user-friendly. One can learn it by itself. And there are several videos available in the YouTube, so you can refer the video and you can learn the CMA, and it's very, very easy to do. And there are several paid packages also, Stata, SAS. Paid package means those are statistical tool for other statistical tests, and one of the statistical tests, that is meta-analysis, also can be done by these packages. All free software and paid software, whatever I mentioned here, those are exclusive for meta-analysis. And paid packages, those are not exclusive for meta-analysis, but meta-analysis is one component of their analysis. Other tests like t-test, ANOVA, correlation, other tests are also available in Stata, and meta-analysis is one of the aspects, one of the tests you can perform in Stata as plus like that. And the comprehensive meta-analysis, it is developed, distributed, and marketing by the Biostat USA. And we are going to learn this CMA in our second session. We'll have a hands-on training in second session. And this is the welcome screen of this meta-analysis. I will teach you step by step so that you can note it down and you can practice by yourself whenever you are free. But there is a catch. The free software of comprehensive meta-analysis, which is available for evaluate point of view, it is validity is 10 times or 10 days, whichever is earlier. Once you have opened it, that will be counted as one use. So don't close it, use it for many hours, that doesn't matter. But once you close it, so your lifeline has gone like that. And also, if you look at the price of this software, for 1 year, they are charging around $300 US. But there are some agency, they are selling in little bit cheap price, some Malaysia agency. You can purchase if you like it then. So this much, I have completed my presentation. Any question, any query are welcome from you. And after that, we'll meet at 3 p.m. for hands-on training. Then I'll request moderator, please.
Thank
Any
you, sir.
query
That
from
was a fruitful
participant?
session. Participants, if you have any queries, either you can post in the chat box or can ask the person directly. So I think we do not have any queries now. I think we'll get a deep understanding about this once the practical sessions are over.
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
So in practical session, at any time, anyone encounter any problem, please ask me. I will clarify directly.
Okay. And
बता दे
participants,
please.
okay. Participants, please note, we'll have the next session at 3 p.m. So kindly ensure your presence by 2:50. And we have sent some files to the WhatsApp group that was created for this program. And please have your laptops also ready with the downloaded files. Thank you.